Hoping to understand themselves, many turn to psychology. Psychology roots are broad and its ideas big, and its investigations are scientific. It answers questions by scientifically studying how we act, think, and feel. Consider some of the questions psychologists wonder about. How much are we shaped by our genes? And how much by our home and community environment? In what ways are we like members of the human family? How do we differ? How often and why do we dream? What do babies actually perceive and think? Are some people just born smarter? Can we make it on intelligence alone? What about creativity and emotional intelligence? What triggers our bad moods and our good ones? What is the difference between a normal mood swing and a psychological one? As you can see, psychological science has produced some fascinating and sometimes surprising answers to these questions. Psychology is so very interesting. There are many different perspectives in psychology. The first one is neuroscience, the study of the nervous system, especially the brain. This is where we connect the brain and the body and they interrelate. It deals with emotions and how you are feeling. Subfields that use this perspective are biological, cognitive, and clinical. We look at how our blood chemistry affects our moods and what we perceive to be real. Here are a few questions neuroscientists would ask. How do we tell the difference between red and blue? What happens when we sleep to the brain? What exactly are memories and how are they stored in the brain? Why do we get hungry? How do emotions and attitudes affect our vulnerabilities to infection and disease? How does heredity influence our development? And what role does genetics play in personality traits? What role does abnormal brain chemistry play in psychological disorders? Evolutionary. This is the newest psychological perspective. It refers to the application of the principles of evolution to explain psychological processes. It believes that individual members of society compete for survival. Behavior genetics, how our genes and environment influence individual behaviors. Psychodynamic, comes from Freud. How does the unconscious play a role in behavior? And the behavioral, how does our environment play a part in who we are? The mental activities involved in acquiring, retaining, and using knowledge and sociocultural, the effect that our culture has on our behaviors. Behavioral is referring to your environment. How much influence does your environment have over your behavior? I am a behaviorist and think the environment plays an important part in who you become. John Watson was a behaviorist who believed you could take any child at birth and, depending on the environment, could make him into a doctor, lawyer, or thief. Cognitive is how we encode, process, store, and retrieve information. Sociocultural is the culture you grew up in. How much does it affect you? If you are raised in the Aborigine tribe, would you be different? I grew up in the Greek culture, and I know it has shaped my views on the world. The hypothesis is when we are sleep deprived, we remember less the next day. We all probably have experienced this, but we must prove it in a scientific experiment. We have subjects in the laboratory get a good night's sleep, then we test memory. The second night we let them get little sleep and test memory. This is a scientific experiment. The second night we let them get Zimbardo did an experiment on prisoners who were paid to enter a prison experiment. Some were the prisoners and some were the guards. They were randomly chosen. They did this experiment in the basement at Stanford University. The experiment got so out of control that they had to stop the experiment after 3 days. The guards took their roles very seriously and the prisoners were treated harshly. He wanted to see what goes on in a prison environment. We also use scatter plots to record information. In the scatter plot, there is a positive correlation between weight and height. There are some outliers, but the information is conclusive. Psychologists use scatter plots a lot. The next slide is about cause and effect. Low self-esteem can cause depression. Depression can cause low self-esteem. Disturbing incidents can cause depression along with genes causing depression. What are research methods that psychologists use in finding out information scientifically? There is descriptive. This is scientific procedure that involves systematically observable behavior in order to describe the relationship among behaviors and events. There is correlational. That allows precise calculation of how strongly related two factors are to each other. We know that there is a strong correlation between cigarette smoking and lung cancer. Experimental explores cause and effect. We do many different experiments in a controlled setting to find out more about human behavior. When we manipulate one factor to produce a change in another factor. Sometimes our perceptions are often based on previous experiences. In the photo, when you show both photos, people are more apt to see a rabbit in the second picture. When only the duck is shown, people are more likely to see the duck.